All right, so I want to spend a few minutes just showing you how I would go about revising something that I've written. And I did not write this. One of my students did. And I just want to show you a little bit about how I would work through figuring out what I would change if this was mine. All right. So I'm going to just take a look at this in little pieces and figure out if it's ordered correctly, if the things that are in here are ordered correctly. And I'm going to separate it a little bit. Instead of having it all in one big paragraph like this, with this little addition on here, I'm going to separate it a little bit too. So here we go. The scariest monster is your childhood monster, the one that you always think about and sometimes dream about. Well, let me tell you about mine. It was black and blue, and it had lots of legs and big eyes. I felt like it was following me up the stairs. They would also sleep under my bed. I would always check, but nothing was under the bed. In the podcast, so now it looks like we're transitioning to something different. So I'm going to go down, and then I'm going to indent. And I'm also going to make sure that this is indented as well. This is a pretty decent introduction. I like that this student started by telling us about their own childhood monster. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to change some things here, but I'm going to keep going for now. In the podcast, it was talking about vampires, and they're also talking about this one man named Vlad. He was an emperor. He would impale them on sticks. They also said people would burn dead people's heart and liver because they thought they would come back and haunt them. So they asked if they would burn their liver and heart. Back to talking about Vlad, someone made a movie based on him. So if the name sounds familiar and a quote from the text is, the roots of most vampire stories can be traced back to superstitions rooted in ancient cultures across the world. I think this is a myth, but in one story it says another Greek tale involves Lamia, a mistress of Zeus, who becomes cursed by Zeus's wife Hera and doomed to hunt children, devouring them. And then that's the end of the prompt, or the end of the response. I have a lot of thoughts about this one, and the first thing that I guess I would wonder is if this is the student's claim. The scariest monster is your childhood monster. And if that is the claim, and I'm going to bold it here, that means that her job is to prove that this is true, okay? And the tricky thing is that your job is to include evidence from the text to support that this is true, right? So if I was the student, I would be spending my time looking for evidence in the text that proves that my childhood monster is scarier than the monsters that the authors discussed. So I would have reasons why my childhood monster is scarier than the squid, the first vampires, or Bigfoot. Okay, so maybe I would have something like many of the creatures that people consider monsters don't attack others. Could I find examples about Bigfoot? Could I find a quote about Bigfoot that proves that it's true that monsters aren't always attacking people? If people consider Bigfoot a monster, Bigfoot doesn't harm anybody. He's not out there to hurt anybody. So I would use something from that article to support my claim there. Okay. And then, the student spends a lot of time talking about this vampires topic, but I don't really understand how this relates to this up here. there doesn't seem to be a connection. The only thing in here that she really claims is, I think this is a myth. And that is only mentioned, and I don't even know what this refers to. Does this mean all this stuff up here? And then she kind of jumps around a bit. She talks about Vlad, and then she talks about burning dead people's hearts and livers, which was a totally different story. And then she goes back to talking about Vlad again, and I'm not sure what the point of any of that really is. Okay, so that is a concern for me. I don't think she developed that very well. So if this was me, I would get rid of all of that. I wouldn't use that. I would go with this idea of the scariest monster is your childhood monster. And honestly, I would probably change this to the scariest monster is my childhood monster. And then I would get rid of all this you stuff. So I would say something like, I used to spend hours thinking about this monster, and I even had nightmares about him. Notice that she mentioned dreams. I'm turning the word to nightmares because that has a scarier connotation, doesn't it? And I'm trying to prove that my monster is scary. Okay. I also need to put in a comma here because this is a complete thought. I used to spend hours thinking about my monster. And this is a complete thought. I even had nightmares about him. So anytime I have two complete thoughts that I'm joining together, I need a comma with a fanboy's word. For and nor, but, or yet so. Okay? And then I accidentally did two periods there. So then again, I'm going to try to get rid of the word you. All right? And so I would probably just delete this entire sentence. I used to spend hours thinking about this monster, and I even had nightmares about him. He was black and blue and had lots of legs and big eyes. Period. I felt like he, gotta be consistent with our pronouns, was following me up the stairs. He would also sleep under my bed. Semicolon. I would always check, but nothing was there. He would also sleep under my bed. I would always check, but nothing was there. Something like that. So I feel like there's a sort of decent introduction here. I feel like there's a lot of potential to expand on this. Okay, he was black and blue. Where was he black and blue? Did he have a black head and a blue body? Did he was he striped black and blue? Like, there's potential here to make this much more visual so that my reader can very much picture my monster and the colors that he had. And then when it comes to lots of legs, are they hairy? Are they spiky and rough? Are they skinny and flexible, or are they chunky? I don't know, and strong. When it comes to his eyes, are his big eyes dark? Are they light? Are they angry? Are they, I don't know, does he have big bushy eyebrows? There's lots of different things that the student could have added to that description. All right. But I'm going to move on for now because I want to get to my other points. All right. Many of the creatures that people consider monsters don't attack others. That's one thought that we had. Another thought, or another reason that this child's scariest monster is her childhood monster, could be because we could write my monster is frightening in appearance. Okay, and so then we can go back to talking about which of the monsters in the articles weren't necessarily scary to look at. Was Bigfoot scary to look at? Maybe, I don't know. What about the squid? I think the squid is kind of gross, but I don't know if it's scary to look at. And what about these vampires? Did they look like normal people? Because if so, then they probably weren't scary to look at. So if this was me, I would probably find a quote here that I would use about vampires and why they're not necessarily scary, which again proves that my monster, my childhood monster, is scarier. Okay. And then maybe one more reason, because you want to try to quote text 3 different times. Okay. And so I'm going to go back to what I said about my childhood monster. Following me, sleeping under my bed. My monster easily my monster shows my monster seems to be present in my safest places. Ooh, think about this for a second, okay? If my childhood monster is scariest because he would sleep under my bed, right? Let's go back and think about the articles that we read. Where do these monsters show up that would not be considered a safe place? Well, I think about the squid. The squid shows up in the ocean. Nobody would say that an ocean is a safe place, right? So it would be more expected for something scary to show up in the ocean than it would be in your bedroom. Okay, so again, if I find a quote about the squid being in the ocean from this article, I can use that quote to support the fact that, again, my monster is the scariest monster, my childhood monster. Does this make sense? I hope this makes sense. So I just wanted you to see, like, you could keep this all in one paragraph, and the idea is to use your thoughts and support them with just little pieces from the text. And I'm not going to go in, but right here, I would have my quotes from the text according to blah, 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 blah. And that's really important to put in here, okay? So I hope this is helpful, and if it's not, please ask more questions because I want to get you to a good place with your writing. I also would finish this paragraph by having one more point about bringing it kind of back home. So maybe something like, for all these reasons, my version of a monster is the most blood, no, that's, I was going to say blood curdling. For all these reasons, my version of a monster is the most frightening of all. And that would be my ending. Going back to my main point, my claim. Okay, that's all for now.